Mother is kicked out of the house while pregnant on Christmas Eve, but she wins the lottery. The soft glow of Christmas lights illuminated the frosted windows of the house Emily once called home. Inside, muffled laughter echoed as the warmth of the fire crackled in the background. But Emily wasn't inside. She stood on the icy sidewalk, her hands trembling not from the cold, but from the heartbreak of what had just happened. "Get out, Emily. I'm done with your excuses," her husband, Marcus, had bellowed moments before slamming the door in her face. His words still rang in her ears as the December chill seeped through her thin coat. She was 7 months pregnant with nowhere to go and no one to call. Marcus had always been cruel, but tonight he had crossed a line, accusing her of being a burden. He told her to leave, ignoring her pleas for mercy. It didn't matter to him that it was Christmas Eve or that she was carrying their unborn child. To Marcus, Emily was just another obstacle standing in the way of his ambitions. Emily clutched her small duffel bag, containing little more than a change of clothes and a few toiletries. She hadn't even been allowed to grab her prenatal vitamins or the baby clothes she had been meticulously collecting from thrift stores. Her breath clouded in the air as she started walking, unsure of where her feet would take her. The streets were eerily quiet, the holiday cheer muted by the bitter cold. Each step felt heavier than the last, as Emily fought to keep tears from freezing on her cheeks. The life she had built with Marcus had crumbled in a single night, leaving her with nothing but questions and despair. A chance encounter. After walking for hours, Emily's legs gave out, and she found herself sitting on a bench outside a gas station. The fluorescent lights flickered overhead as she stared blankly at the convenience store. People came and went, their arms filled with last-minute holiday purchases, but no one seemed to notice the pregnant woman sitting alone in the cold. She debated calling a shelter, but hesitated. The thought of sharing her pain with strangers felt unbearable. Instead, she shuffled into the store, hoping to find a moment of warmth. The clerk barely glanced at her as she wandered the aisles, pretending to browse. Her eyes landed on a rack of lottery tickets near the counter. "$1 for a dream," the slogan read. Emily scoffed bitterly. A dream? She had spent her entire life chasing dreams, love, stability, happiness, and now she had nothing to show for it. But something about the ticket called to her. Maybe it was desperation, maybe it was irony. Whatever it was, she found herself fishing the last crumpled dollar bill from her coat pocket. "Merry Christmas," the clerk muttered as he handed her the ticket. Emily nodded, tucking it into her bag. It wasn't hope she felt. It was a small, fleeting distraction from her reality. A warm shelter. Emily left the store and continued walking until she found an old church with its doors open. The warm light spilling out onto the snow-covered steps felt inviting, almost as if it were calling her inside. She hesitated, but her aching body begged for rest. Inside, the scent of pine and candle wax filled the air. A few parishioners sat scattered among the pews, their heads bowed in prayer. Emily chose a corner near the back, where she could be alone. The silence was both a comfort and a burden as she let her thoughts consume her. "Rough night," a gentle voice interrupted her spiral of despair. Emily looked up to see an older woman with kind eyes and a shawl draped over her shoulders. She introduced herself as Helen, a volunteer who helped run the church's food bank. Emily hesitated but eventually opened up, sharing pieces of her story. Helen listened without judgment, her expression softening with each word. "You've been dealt a cruel hand, my dear," Helen said, placing a comforting hand on Emily's shoulder. "But you're stronger than you know. And this little one," she glanced at Emily's swollen belly, "this little one is going to bring you more joy than you can imagine." The lottery win. Weeks later, Emily's life changed forever. While cleaning out her small boarding room after a long shift at a local diner, she stumbled upon the lottery ticket buried at the bottom of her bag. With nothing better to do, she turned on the old television in her room and watched as the winning numbers were announced. Her heart raced as each number matched. By the time the final number was called, Emily was shaking so hard she nearly dropped the ticket. "This can't be real," she whispered, her voice trembling. But it was real. Emily had just won $150 million. Emily's journey didn't end there. With the guidance of a financial advisor, she claimed her winnings anonymously and began rebuilding her life. She rented a modest apartment, stocked up on essentials for her baby, and started a foundation called New Horizons to support single mothers like herself. As the months passed, Emily gave birth to a healthy baby girl named Grace, a symbol of her newfound hope and strength. Through every trial, Emily rose above her challenges, determined to create a better future for herself and her child. Months after Grace was born, Emily's life had stabilized. Her foundation, New Horizons, was thriving, helping countless women in need. With her newfound confidence, Emily felt a sense of peace that had eluded her for years. But shadows of her past began to resurface. One day, as she was leaving the foundation's office, Emily noticed a figure lingering near the entrance. It was Marcus. He looked unkempt, his once pristine suits replaced by a worn jacket and scuffed shoes. His eyes, once filled with arrogance, now brimmed with desperation. "Emily," he called out, his voice shaky. "Can we talk?" Emily hesitated. She could feel her heart pounding as memories of their last encounter flooded back. But this time, she wasn't the vulnerable woman standing in the snow. She was stronger now. "What do you want, Marcus?" she asked, her tone firm. "I've lost everything," he admitted, his head hanging low. "The house, the business. I've hit rock bottom. I heard about the foundation. I thought maybe you could help me." Emily let out a bitter laugh. "Help you? Like you helped me when I was freezing in the streets on Christmas Eve?" "Emily, please," Marcus pleaded, his voice breaking. "I made a mistake. I was selfish. I see that now. I just need a second chance." Her eyes narrowed. "Second chances are for people who genuinely want to change, not for manipulators who only show up when they smell money. My answer is no." With that, she turned and walked away, leaving Marcus standing in the cold, just as he had left her. But as Emily walked back to her car, her heart felt heavy. While she had no sympathy left for Marcus, his reappearance stirred something within her, a reminder that her journey wasn't just about escaping the past, but confronting it, a threatened peace. As the weeks passed, Marcus's desperation turned into malice. He began spreading lies about Emily, accusing her of stealing his money and abandoning him. Local tabloids picked up the story, painting her as a heartless opportunist. At first, Emily was devastated. The headlines felt like daggers, undoing the sense of security she had built. But with the support of her financial advisor, Evelyn, and her foundation team, Emily decided to fight back, not with anger, but with the truth. She released a public statement sharing her story, how she had been abandoned on Christmas Eve, pregnant and alone, and how she had turned her pain into purpose by helping others. Her honesty struck a chord with the public. Donations to the foundation surged, and messages of support poured in from women who had faced similar struggles. The community rallied behind Emily, and Marcus's attempts to tarnish her reputation backfired spectacularly. Isolated and penniless, Marcus found himself facing the harsh consequences of his actions. A future full of hope. By the time Grace turned 1, Emily had not only transformed her life, but also the lives of many others. The foundation expanded, opening shelters and providing job training programs for single mothers across the state. Emily remained a private benefactor, letting the work speak for itself. One sunny spring afternoon, as she played with Grace in the park, Helen approached her with a warm smile. "You've done something extraordinary, Emily," she said. "You've turned your pain into something beautiful." Emily looked at her daughter, who giggled as she chased a butterfly. "It's all for her," she replied. "Grace gave me the strength to keep going." Helen nodded. "And now, you're giving that strength to so many others." The final confrontation. Months later, Marcus made one last attempt to confront Emily. He showed up unannounced at the foundation's main office, demanding to see her. When Emily walked into the meeting room, Marcus's face twisted with a mix of anger and desperation. "You think you've won, don't you?" he spat, parading around like some kind of hero, while I'm left with nothing. Emily crossed her arms, her expression calm but unyielding. "You made your choices, Marcus. You built your life on selfishness and greed, and now you're paying the price. I don't owe you anything, but I'm still Grace's father," he shouted. You can't keep her from me? Emily's gaze hardened. Grace deserves better than a father who only sees her as leverage. You had your chance to be there for us, and you threw it away. Now leave. This time, Marcus didn't argue. He slumped in defeat and walked out, disappearing into the crowd. For Emily, it was the closure she didn't know she needed. A legacy of strength. Years later, Emily stood on the stage at a charity gala, holding a plaque honoring New Horizons for its contributions to the community. The audience applauded as she shared her journey, her voice steady and full of conviction. Resilience isn't about never falling, she said. It's about rising, no matter how many times life knocks you down. My story is just one example of how second chances can change lives, not just for one person, but for an entire community. As the applause thundered around her, Emily looked down at Grace, now a curious and vibrant young girl, clapping enthusiastically in the front row. Emily smiled, her heart full of gratitude and hope. Together, they had overcome the storms of the past and built a future full of promise. And as Emily stepped off the stage, she knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, she and Grace would face them together, with strength, love, and unshakable hope.